This is Heart of the Matter, short show where we are learning together how to walk in the age of fulfillment. I'm your host, Shawn McCraney, along the road of human life. And then, of course, relative to what we talk about here, which is Christianity, there is a dreaded enemy that I want to warn you about. You know who it is, the hiding in the bushes and byways of the world. It's smooth, it's subtle, it's persuasive, it romances us initially with claims of adoration and love, but winds up being nothing more than a super controlling spouse in the end. This enemy to authentic living, unity, liberty, and love is sometimes curated, sometimes it occurs naturally, but it always wants its way. This enemy always has demands. It will always reject you if you don't conform, and will always war against everything and everybody outside of its grip. What enemy am I talking about? Culture. Culture. Of every sort, of every kind, every field, of people gathering together, culture becomes an enemy to the faith in my estimation. From a very early age, I began to observe the impact culture had on people. And by my early teens, I think I sort of realized that I didn't like what it demanded, and a pretty healthy disdain of what I saw and experienced. Cultures are usually a natural byproduct of human beings needing to feel secure by and through belonging, to feel superior to the rest of the world because of their belonging to that culture. And in some cases, it's a way and means to control. There is a strength in numbers mentality that exists in most cultures, unless there's a culture that prides itself on being small. I'm sure there is somewhere, but those numbers will always define themselves through a myriad of demands and a myriad of expectations that it puts upon its people. As mentioned, I began to observe the nature of cultures as a young person, cultures based on race, cultures based on nationality, socioeconomic factors, hobbies. And these demands are expressed through lifestyle, music, food, activities, dress. Cultures come with all of that stuff. Usually high school became a universe of cultures as high school had the jocks, and it had the nerds, and it had the popular people, and it had the cheerleaders, the partiers, the surfers in my case, and all with their associated demands and expectations of the people in their group. These things only became more defined as I became an adult, like they would with you, and they orbit around life kind of like birds of a feather flock together, and reassuring each other that us liberals are really smart, or us conservatives are really with it, or the rich have this and the poor have this, or whatever it might be. It all is a matter of feeling superior, different from the rest, intellectually, morally, or having better priorities. In essence, culture is founded in fear, and culture is founded in pride. And these two attributes are anathema to Christianity: fear and pride. I started to mess around with cultural expectations. To me, it was ridiculous to fully clothe oneself in protective gear of one culture and refuse to embrace people of another. And while I was certainly individually drawn to certain cultures as a younger person, the California surfer, punk, lifeguarding, swimming, water polo scene, even the culture of being a Mormon and the culture of being a little bit of a troublemaker, I tried to retain those cultural identities unapologetically, while at the same time trying to invade the other cultural groups as an authentic individual. To me, I couldn't see any reason why you don't go up to one of the popular girls when you have a shaved head and a bandana around your boot and ask her out. I didn't see the cultural things as being important to my life. But I usually discovered that every established culture that I sought to try to enter ultimately tried to remake me into a version of itself. And if you refuse those transitions and you refuse to be like them, you will soon not to be welcomed by them. Generally speaking, all cultures will, to some degree or another, consist on the following. They have rules. spoken and unspoken rules. They have demands and expectations of people of its group. They have an us versus them mentality. We are this, they are that. And in the end, there is there's pride, and there is a feeling of superiority. And at the end of it all, it usually manifests itself in some way in viciousness, in looking at others viciously and saying they're not like us, therefore we hate them or whatever, and we mock them. The rules govern the tribe and are well understood by every participant in a given culture. And when the rules are rejected, the cultural participant will be rejected. Same with the demands and expectations of a culture. Active Mormons don't hang out in bars. Christians typically don't use cocaine. Punks hate disco. Whatever it is, whatever culture you are, you'll kind of embrace it. And these demands and expectations almost always express themselves in outward things like dress, style, places frequented, friends received, food eaten, music loved, stuff like that. In all this, the us versus them mentality is established. Jocks, typically don't join the chess club, typically. And conservatives don't get tattoos. And true Christians don't say the F word. There's all these things that culture becomes the predator and nonconformists become the subject of its derision, which emphasizes the attitude of pride and superiority in each group. We are the best. Our way is superior. You are lesser. We are entitled. You are not. And in the end, these attitudes of pride, they lead to that viciousness I mentioned, which is antithetical to agape love, which is why I think culture is one of the biggest enemies to Christianity on earth today, to the true essence of Christianity. My Savior, your Savior, broke through cultural barriers. And he, a Jew, sat with sinners, the great unwashed, and he was chided for that. He talked alone with a Samaritan woman at a well, which was absolutely forbidden in every way, and yet he did. He touched lepers, which was forbidden, and refused to embrace the man-made rules imposed upon him by the culture from which he originated. For this reason, it seems to me that all Christians everywhere ought to do everything in their power to resist cultural demands men and women have created for us. Forget about it. And this all speaks to a rejection of what men have called objective religion. You will find that religion, largely written, smaller into denominations, all have their own peculiar cultures that include those things that say it's us, not them, that say we're superior, they're lesser. And so culture's an enemy to true Christianity. Culture says that a white man doesn't sit with a black man, or whatever the culture that you're part of. It has all of these exceptions, and that's not part of our faith. Christians have no rules, spoken or unspoken, other than the rules that God writes on their hearts and minds to love. That is the rule. So Christians live by no external demands or expectations that we have to embrace. None. It's not about those things. Christians refuse the us versus them mentality. We shouldn't say, well, we are the Catholics and they are the Mormons. We should say, we are all human beings seeking for Christ. And don't let those culturally imposed upon demands from the institution cause you as an individual to obey them. Break out. Be like Christ. Christians refuse attitudes of pride. They refuse fear, superiority. They reject the my way is better than your attitude. They refuse to divide with those who don't think like they do, or at least they should, in my estimation. Christians realize that all of those things in the end leads to downright mean viciousness in our hearts, which is the last thing a Christian ought to be known for. That's why culture is the enemy. Culture is, in many ways, what prohibits true Christianity from blossoming. Write your comments below. We'll get to them here on Heart of the Matter long shows on Tuesday nights. See you then.